Well, it's good to be back with you again for another edition of the Kevin Cook Show. We've got Heidi Hollis on board, and we've got two different guests tonight. The first one is Thomas Creal, and he's an expert in money laundering. And I have a lot of experience in, well, not personal experience, but people I've been associated with that were very great money launderers.
So we're talking about Trump tonight. That's cool.
No, we're talking about closer people than that to me. But my evil ex-brother-in-law, or pseudo-brother-in-law, was used to launder money for the mob, of course, and just family business. And at any rate, so I've always found money laundering interesting. And then the second half, we have Paul Davids on, and he's written a book series, all kinds of things. I mean, this guy, Blowing America's Mind, the CIA, Mind Control, Drugs, LSD, and Princeton. So,
wow, that all goes together. That should be
not exactly a boring. Yes, it does. So, at any rate, I always kind of found money laundering interesting. It's just another little deal. But there's lots of good guests. I mean, good news stories rather. And one of the things I know you'll probably be just gaga over the Grammy Awards last night, but
I actually missed it.
Oh, what a heartbreak. Believe me, you didn't miss much. I will say this before I say the rest of the stuff I'm going to say about him. The very best, without question, no doubt, take it to the bank, artist and good looking was Lady Gaga. I've never seen her look any better in my life.
Wow.
And Lady, she did a piano song to start the show, and that was the highlight of the show. And
I've seen her in concert. She's amazing. She's so talented.
I don't know what she did to her skin, but it's like it was sandblasted. I mean, she's not an old person, no, but I mean, she had like CoverGirl kind of skin. I don't know what the heck they did, sandblasted her down in the back or whatever, but she looked really better than I've ever seen her. And she did excellent vocals. But,
I really wanted to see it. I put it on my DVR, and it deleted it for no good reason. Rotten, good for nothing
really?
Service. I was so ticked. Yeah.
Well,
So I wanted to see it.
Happens sometimes.
I've seen some of the highlights, but I mean, she always puts on a fantastic show. She's super talented.
Well, she was, like I say, the best of the lot, but she didn't really enter into the picture much. Now, I did like Little Big Town. They're pretty good. They're one of my favorite country groups. But
I saw
the thing was
of you two on a barge performing. I thought that looked neat.
Well, I mean, there's some good little spots, but what I'm saying, what griped me is they were trying to politicize it by knocking poor downtrodden Trump. And I know, Trump. They even had Hillary Clinton on there.
Oh, that was hilarious. I did see that. I was rolling. That was funny.
Well, that's ridiculous. What are these Grammy Award weasels trying to politicize the Grammys for?
If they didn't, it would have been like, where are they in the universe? They had to. It's a lot in the news. Every day it's changing. It's like sports.
Well, what's that got to do with a bunch of singers?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they try to use their platform, of course, for these things.
And then they had a white guy at the very end that was some kind of wannabe rapper. And he was trying to push unfettered immigration.
Who is that? Was it Eminem?
I don't know. No, it wasn't Eminem. It was some guy nobody's ever heard of that I don't know where he came out of, but some new guy.
Oh, Eminem was the top rapper, and he's a white guy. It doesn't matter.
Oh, it doesn't. Well, it's just you don't see that many white rappers, but there's a few, yeah. But what I'm saying is I don't care whether he was a green rapper. Who is he to be saying he wants unended, unfettered immigration? I don't. Most people don't. I mean,
it was.
Well, maybe if you're making millions of dollars as a rap star, you can, you don't care. But frankly, if you had hundreds of Mexican rappers coming up here sucking up your jobs, you'd probably care all over the place, which is a crazy idea, but who knows? But at any rate, so much for that. But it was different. It really was. But I've never been that crazy for the Grammys except Lady Gaga, but, nuts to this little weasel. But anyhow, Hillary Clinton, she's more crooked than Trump. Trump doesn't even merit even being in the same conversation with being as crooked as Hillary.
Are you serious? Come on now.
Yes. Oh, well, you heard John Legato, who was on, retired FBI agent, said they're nothing but a criminal and murderous enterprise. I mean, he was on just a few months with us ago. I mean, he wasn't making it up to placate me. He's a retired FBI agent, an ex-Marine. I mean, come on.
I don't know. Trump is a croony from New York, though.
Yes, but the Clintons have got a body count that would make the mob look like sweethearts. Now, before we take our break, there's a Navy pilot who describes a UFO sighting as a white tic tac the size of a plane. And this was something that came up in 2004. U.S. Navy pilot Commander David Fravor said it was a white tic tac about the size of a Hornet, which is 40 foot long with no wings, just hanging close to the water. The smooth flying craft left no wake on the water and began to shadow the actions of Fravor and other pilots. A separate crew tracked it and filmed it for 1.5 minutes. As it got closer, my nose is starting to pull back up. It accelerates and it's gone. Faster than anything I'd ever seen in my life. We turn around and say, go see what's in the water, and there was nothing, just blue water. In other words, it didn't hit the deck. Fravors was a pilot that came forward and told his story recently as the Defense Department, study of UFOs was released. Favor mentioned that. So, I mean, these are high-quality guys. I mean, professional Navy pilots. These aren't just some kind of guys out of a bar. So, obviously, Heidi, I mean, they're not going to destroy their credibility by, admitting this.
And it costs a lot of money to train them to be great observers as well.
Well, of course. These guys ain't nitwits. But anyhow, we should have a really good show tonight. I guess we better go to our first break, but we'll have Tom Creal on and have a lot of interesting stuff. We'll be right back. Well, it's good to be back with you, and it's also good to be back with Thomas Creal. He's the creator and founder of the Hunter Group. He's behind the EVA Black Money game, and he's an expert in tracing black money for over 35 years, including days at the UN as a sanction expert, dealing with rogue dictators, and he's also the author of Money Magicians. It's good to have you, Tom. I'm hoping that you didn't have a difficult time getting on that unusual manner of getting on the show.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Kevin.
Well, I was telling Heidi before this earlier on that I didn't have much experience with the laundering money, no, but I was kind of I didn't marry the gal, but my pseudo brother-in-law was, involved with the mafia, and they laundered money for the mob, and they were very good at it. They owned an ice company, and they would cook the books to look like they were doing 5 times more ice business than they were, and it was a funnel for mob money laundering, and they also laundered money in Vegas, so they were maybe minor league money launderers, but they did a good job. So.
And you speak of that, and money laundering, the reason it's called laundering is it's dirty money, and they're cleaning it, so that's exactly what they're doing. And I always get a kick out of it when I was in Afghanistan. We were trying to teach them the Western way of doing business and living and so forth, and they were doing the exact same thing, extorting money and then cleaning it. So I said, well, we've taught them well.
Well, I'm glad that's what happened. Well, I wasn't involved personally with that, but I mean, I just knew that's what they did, and you'd hear little snippets. And actually, they laundered a lot of money through Vegas. That's my understanding. I don't know how they did it. But they did.
And nowadays the money is so big. When I started in this business, first of all, they didn't even know what to call us. Now they're calling us, forensic accountants, but back then it was just the guys crunching the numbers. But a $10,000 case was big, and this was in Chicago. It was an alderman kicking money back. So now it's in the billions.
That's the politics of Chicago. I'm here right now, actually, in Chicago. That's the way business gets done. That's the only way it gets done. I don't care if you're the head of the Chicago public school system. I mean, the new lady in charge she didn't even get in the door, and she just pulled such garbage. Just crazy.
Well, how could she do it? How could she do it so quickly?
She closed several schools, if I remember right. She closed several schools and then gave a contract to her buddies so she could get a big kickback for it because she gave them the contract. Like her first deal she did, and it was like, wow, you just started. Just crazy.
Golly, she didn't get out the batter's box. She's aggressive.
She was like, you closed several schools to. Oh, it's so typical. So typical.
And now some people in Chicago, they'll call that a fast learner.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess so.
I mean, and then we've got the billionaire governor who's like a mini Trump, It's like, and he's a Republican. It's like, come on now. It's like,
how many governors have been in prison up there? What, 3 or 4 or something?
It's better to ask which
3.
have not.
We've had some good governors, but yeah, Dan Walker was first, and then George Ryan, and then obviously Blagojevich.
Oh,
we've had more.
Oh, yeah, the guy with the hair, Blagojevich, yeah.
Blagojevich.
Well, actually, that makes my beloved New York look like squeaky clean.
I think there's a race between Chicago and New Orleans.
New Orleans. Yeah, New Orleans is a festering little city. I've heard. I don't know that.
What are they doing?
Well, their governors go to jail as well, and I think they've had, if I remember this right, the congressman had like $100,000 in cash in his freezer. I think it was Congressman Jefferson. So,
wow. Oh, they're not as good as Chicago. It takes a little while usually to get busted over here.
Yeah, I think they told him you have to have cold cash, so I think he just put it in his freezer.
Boy, he took it literally, didn't he?
Funny.
He did.
Well, now, Thomas, tell me a little bit more about this EVA game, this EVA Black Money game. What's the format on that?
Well, it's a couple of things, and it's another weapon for me. And the whole idea is to have a fun game for the younger generation to play, like a Candy Crush, so they will play it. And then what I've done is I've integrated in there the Black Money messages. So one of the games you will play is named after a Kuwaiti who is funding the Nusra Front, and he and I have done battle over Twitter, in the courtroom, face-to-face. But the whole idea is to put the messages out there right in the hands of the younger generation, all about black money and who the bad guys really are.
Oh, that's clever. That's awesome.
Well, that's something you don't talk about much at all, no.
No, and also the second part of this was it really just got me irritated that the bad guys use our inventions. They use Twitter to raise money, fund the bad things. They use Facebook. They use the YouTube to create videos. I mean, we've all seen the ISIS beheadings, but Hajjah actually used YouTube to raise money. And then if you really think about it, they used our airplanes to take down the Twin Towers. So I said, I'm going to give them a taste of their own medicine. I'm doing right back at them with social media and the game.
That's pretty cool. Goodness.
It really is. But now this is a little far afield, and I don't know if it fits in the laundered money format. I think it would, but Howard Bloom was a commentator, actually a liberal commentator we had on perhaps 8 or 9 months ago, and before that sometimes. But he was saying there's an Islamic group that buys influence in the country. I don't remember the name of it. Heidi, it's been so long. I don't know whether you're on with me on that show or not. But we're talking in the billions of dollars to buy influence and power here in the U.S. And I guess that would fit into the black money category. And
it does.
They're just running around with bag men, just buying off congressmen and politicians, school superintendents, everybody the little weasels can buy. And
That's sick stuff.
It is.
My definition of black money is very broad. And
so lobbyists are included, I hope.
I'm sure.
Yes. Any part along that chain of commerce, if you're touching that black money, you're included. So if they're in there, yes, please go after them. But I always like to, tell the people, the generals or the law enforcement or the attorneys, I like to go after the getaway driver, not the guys in the bank pulling the trigger, but the guys driving the car to help them get away. So those are the guys I like going after.
Oh, I like that. That's interesting. Honestly, lobbying, the lobbyists, it's just dirty that was made legal. I mean, there's nothing controlling that. It's like, it takes thousands of us pouring into the streets to be heard, but it takes one guy with a big pocket that got lured in by a company that probably was in Congress or whatever at some point, to get in the door and to get their way, just to persuade the rules. It's horrible.
Well, Tom, I would almost. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm interrupting. Go ahead.
No, lobbying it should be transparent. I mean, we all know they're advocating because they're being paid.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I would bet you, Tom. I would bet you, and I don't know anything concrete, but I would bet you that if you were a newly elected congressman, somewhere within the first few months, somebody from the pharmaceutical industry would come by with a duffel bag or less, more sophisticated way of paying off a new congressman. I would almost guarantee it. Wouldn't you think so, Heidi?
For some reason, I didn't hear you real clear on that.
No, I'm saying that I would bet that a new congressman would be approached by the pharmaceutical industry within a few months of showing up.
I think everybody gets approached, whether they'll admit to it or not. We believe in, I think the average American really doesn't think it's all behind closed doors, meandering, but it is. It really is. I just think that they think it's so out in the public, but I think they'd be really surprised how much we are just not in the know about. Black projects too. Do you consider that into the dirty money category?
Yeah, the dark side of every industry.
Yeah.
And there's so much in the dark web. There's so many black projects. I got shut down by the CIA a number of times, and I would ask really? Why, and they would just say, you don't need to know. I say, yeah,
none of your business. Yeah. Well, see, that's what I've wondered about that. What amount is black budgeted of our budget? At one time, I remember that Donald Rumsfeld, the guy that was the Secretary of Defense under Bush, he just admitted, yes, the Pentagon's lost $2 trillion. Don't know, 2 or 3 trillion, something like that. 2.3, I think it was, the figure he mentioned, and we don't know where it went. And everybody just swallowed that down like he just said it's a sunny day or something.
Right. Well, I always think, you remember that movie, the Charlie Wilson movie?
No, I don't think so.
No, he was a congressman, Charlie Wilson. The Charlie Wilson Wars, they funded the Afghans when the Russians were there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it was a movie. Tom Hanks played Charlie Wilson, but that's reality. That was the black money going over to the Afghans and buying the weapons.
Okay.
They're killing us with their own guns.
Yeah. Well, I've heard rumors. And I don't know the validity of it, but I think they've been repeated often enough that the Bushes had C-130s shuffling money on over to the Middle East and loaded up with dough. I mean, we're talking billions of dollars, and nobody ever questioned it or asked for an accounting.
Here's one, and it goes back to Afghanistan again. The amount of cash that moved out of their country. First of all, our country sent a lot of money over there. I think it's over $1 trillion now over the 16 years. But I traced the money, so I spent a lot of time at the central bank, and I traced on one day $135 million in cash leaving Kabul airport over to Dubai.
Yeah.
It was on pallets. It was all cash, U.S. dollars.
Yeah.
And as long as they filed a form with the central bank, it was legal.
Come on, if I went to Australia with more than $7,000 in my pocket or 5, I don't remember what it was, you would be busted and never allowed back in the country ever again.
Right.
You can't have that cash on you.
Well, different rules apply to the regular bozo, I guess.
Oh, I was so mad. I was like, you mean I have to put my money in a bank and access it that way and get tagged with all these taxes to pull my own money out just to go live over in Australia for a bit? Yep. Can't put it in your pockets, and they'll claim it otherwise. Like, geez, that's crazy.
I got the biggest kick out of their defense was, well, if they follow the forms, it's legal. And I said, no. I said, they can file all the forms they want. What that money is going to be used for is not good things. I don't care if they file a form. $135 million in cash is not going for a good cause.
No. Well, didn't you hear? I think a recent figure. El Chapo, that little guy that's the drug pen they arrested about a year ago, that he has $13 billion in assets. $13 billion.
Wow, he's neck and neck with Stalin there.
How much money?
Sorry, with Putin. With Putin. Look, I said Stalin.
No, Vladimir's got a lot more than that.
Oh, does he? Oh, okay. I said Stalin. He's close to Stalin anyway.
Well, now, Tom, I think I've heard Vladimir was worth on the order of $300 billion. I don't know what that's.
I have not heard that much, but I know he's definitely above $30 billion.
I don't know whether the figure may have been spurious, but I thought it was $300 billion. But I mean, that was alleged. But I mean,
I'm sure it's all clean money, though, too, right?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, I'll bet it is. Yeah, real clean. But I don't know. Just for curiosity, since you've had such an interesting perspective on this, are the Rothschilds still? I know they're 900, but are they still big money players? And are they the richest people in the world, if you will? Or I don't know whether if you have any knowledge of that.
Boy, I don't. And I follow the Forbes 400, so okay. I don't have any inside knowledge.
Well, I just had heard that internationally they were still way up there at the top of the heap. I didn't know. With their age and wild spending or something might have worked them down. But I'd heard that there's different groups that are richer than you think. That yes, you'd hear about the Waltons and Walmart people and so forth and so on. But I mean that there's other groups that don't occur to you. And of course, you hear about Warren Buffett and Gates. But there's people a step beyond them of wealth.
Yeah, wasn't it today that the U.S. Treasury released the oligarch list for Russia?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't see that.
I think they released a list of 200 wealthiest individuals out of Russia, the oligarchs. Not that they're going to be sanctioned, but here's the guys with the billions of dollars and their relationship to Putin.
Yeah. What was the maximum they had? Did it show what the maximum the guys had, or did it say? Or?
No, it didn't show.
Oh, okay.
But it was a list of 200 people. It's a lot of billionaires in Russia.
They do have them. They really do. And they all pay homage basically to Vlad, at least for the time being, till they decide he's outlived his usefulness, I guess. But I don't know.
What re-election?
Well, yes, and then didn't they arrest the guy that was the main opposition or something like that?
That's right.
It's a little bit of a stiff deal getting elected over there. But Tom, we're going to take a break at the bottom of the hour. When we get back, we might talk about your book and how to contact your website and any little functions you've got going. Okay,
perfect. Thank you.
We'll be right back. And Heidi and Tom, tell us about how to get up with you, your website, and the Money Magician's book, and any other things you'd like to highlight.
Well, I would like to highlight the game, and the website is blackmoneygames.com. And right there on the front page, you can download it on iTunes or on Google Play. So I'm pushing that because I do want 1 million people around the world. There's a bunch of Afghans, like 100,000, that have downloaded it, and
really?
The younger people over there.
Pretty good.
And I worked with those guys every single day. I was training them in their version of FinCEN, their FIU unit, to trace the money laundering, which it's big over there. And I actually got to a point where the governor up in Mazar Sharif, they called me because they found $1 million flowing through his bank account. And that's a governor. Now, a governor not making $1 million. So they found that. So I felt good that my training was paying off. But they do hate corruption, so they've been downloading my game.
So what's that royal family that has like kicked out the other half of the royal family? Who is that again? Who did that over the Middle East?
Oh, the The Saudis.
Saudis?
Oh, it was the Saudis. Okay.
Yeah.
No, the Saudis arrested, the new king arrested all the corrupt individuals of the family, and they did house arrest at the Ritz-Carlton.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they did a lot.
So if you're going to be under house arrest, go to Saudi Arabia.
Well, now, Tom, you made the unusual question for you, but it's, how do I put it delicately? Is the mob defunct, or are they still healthy? Or, since you might have some knowledge of them via the money laundering issue.
Yeah, the mob is different from the way they operated in the past. The Al Capone days are definitely dead. But yes, there's in the breaking of the kneecaps, but there's definitely still a criminal enterprise, and there's tons of bad things going on in every country. So it's not overseas, it's not in the Cyprus, it's not in the offshore islands, it's everywhere.
Oh, so Kevin, you can feel at home once again. That's good news for him.
Well, no, I mean, there must be a few broken kneecaps somewhere.
Well, that happens every weekend in Chicago.
Yeah.
Well, no, I was offered a job to be one of those doing it when I was in college. And I didn't take them up on it, but I mean, I was, considered one of the family, if you will. And but I just want to know their relative health in these days. I haven't really kept up with them that much. There's a good friend of mine, and you probably will know him, Michael Francesi. He's written a few books, but he's out of the mob, and he's a reborn Christian now. But I know him now, and he's just a great guy. But he was I think the second most profitable mobster, first being Al Capone. Yeah, and I just love him for his brain power. So we share these financial investigation techniques, and because he was taking $7 million a week from the U.S. government. Pretty good.
You got to be smart to do that.
Yeah,
that's not a bad take. That really isn't at all. Well, I'm not like mourning them. I just didn't know how they did things anymore, and I just want to see if they were still big money players. But I just didn't know whether he had a finger on the pulse of how they were doing.
Sounds like they're alive, well, and thriving.
Well, they just got more sophisticated, in other words.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, a little sophistication never hurt. But at one time, they owned all the casinos in Vegas. I don't know who. Well, I know there's different front men, but I don't know whether they still had a lot of money in Vegas.
Yeah, even Vegas has changed now.
Yeah, gee.
You know what? I got a kick. I was at this dinner function, and we were talking about humanitarian aid. And one of the guys at the table said, we should ask all the wealthy people in the world to donate 1% of their net worth and use that money.
Yeah.
I said, why don't we do something different? There's $1 trillion stolen every year by dictators, by warlords.
Yeah.
Why don't we go get that money back and use that? Their answer, honest to God, their answer was, it's too hard.
Oh, come on now.
I said, no. I said, so it's easier to go ask for a handout than it is to actually go get the money from the bad guys and use that.
Wow. Yeah. I think we should stop putting money into these countries that could care two craps about us and for our special interests overseas. And it's like, hold it, they just burned our flags. I just don't understand all that.
It's
craziness.
Despicable. It really is.
Yeah.
I'll bet you we paid off that little miserable Kim Jong-un or whatever his name is. Just buckets of money. I mean, just buckets of money. I'm sure. Just to try to buy him off and placate him.
We did it with his father.
Yeah, I'm sure we've continued. There's a money train going on over there, but golly, someday. I'm glad you're promoting your game. Also, is there a website they can go to
for the game? It's blackmoneygames.com. My website for the work I do is hunterforensics.com.
I'm just tickled about that Black Money Games. It is awesome.
It's fun to play too. But you'll love it because I've got pictures of the bad guys. I've got the schemes and the devices and the images. I didn't create it, but this is the development team, and they just did a great job.
In other words, it's a history lesson.
It's also you're attacking the bad guys. You're part of the team.
Right, there you go. Good. That's cool. Hey, if you score really high and getting back at them, is there a secret back door where the government is paying attention and they may hire you? If you're really good at the game.
That's a good idea. Yeah, this could be an application process.
You've heard of these things, where it's like somebody puts out a puzzle once a year. I forget who it is, and they're like they are pretty certain it's the government putting it out there, and whoever solves it the best, they're being contacted to be hired by the government. It's like a whole slew of weird and strange and difficult puzzles and algorithms and stuff. So I bet there's a backdoor in your game. they're watching. There's a backdoor in all of our TVs. They're watching us through that, they've said. So why not?
Well, Thomas, I sure have appreciated it. And I guess the thing that is disgusting is the thing I mentioned about Howard Bloom is how much money is being passed around to buy influence in this country. I have no doubt that almost every strata of society that means anything is being bought off. But, Thomas, it's been great having you, and I look forward to following up on your game.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Heidi. It was a pleasure.
Yeah,
you bet.
Thanks.
You too. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Well, Heidi, I guess we better go to our break before the second half of the show, and I don't know, Heidi.
Cool.
I guess everybody's bought off. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Well, it's good to be back with you. We've got Heidi Hollis on with us, and our second half guest is Paul Davids, who wrote Blowing America's Mind, CIA Mind Control, Drugs, LSD in Princeton. And, Paul, that's a pretty good title for a book.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Blowing America's Mind comes from the headline of an LA Times editorial back in 1977 when the MK Ultra experiments of the CIA, the mind control experiments, were exposed. There was a New York Times headline said no, this was LA Times, the CIA blowing America's mind. And that was sort of the upshot of the feeling about what had happened. These experiments had been conducted on innocent Americans.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that. Yeah.
86 different institutions were enlisted.
Oh.
Researchers and psychiatrists paid. We're talking about prisons and hospitals and universities, colleges, hospitals, and private research centers.
What year was this?
Well, it started in 1952, and it went through the 1970s at least. I mean, that's when they officially declared an end to it, when it was exposed.
Jeez.
But the reason for my book, Blowing America's Mind, which is just out, I co-wrote with John Selby. The two of us were psychology majors at Princeton University back in the late 1960s. Okay. And we enlisted in a project we thought sounded really fascinating. We had no idea it had anything to do with the CIA. And it was conducted near Princeton at the New Jersey Neuropsychiatric Institute, which no longer exists. But they had a research bureau then, and they were researching deep hypnosis and psychedelic drugs.
Wow.
The man running the program was Humphrey Osmond, who coined that term, psychedelic. You know, today everybody uses that word, but it means mind manifesting, and that was the word he came up with because he didn't like psychotropic, he didn't like psychotomimetic for that class of drugs. And we walked right into this project thinking that it could have benefits, and I like that. This title of an old book by Ken Kesey called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And
I remember that.
That's us. I mean, John Selby and I flew over the cuckoo's nest for real at the New Jersey Neuropsychiatric Institute, and that's the story we tell. We've waited a long time to tell it. We've waited until everybody else was dead.
Oh, that's good.
We waited till the coast was clear. You know, I think statute of limitations or whatever.
Right.
And, but we have quite a story to tell, and it's a personal story about what happened to us as part of the program. Those were really interesting times. It was toward the end of the 1960s. And again, at that time, we didn't know about the CIA connection, but we did find that out 10 years later, and we became much more wise about what we'd been through.
That's crazy. Why do these things always seem to only come forward once the cover is blown? How was their cover blown on this anyways? It's like, all right, so we've been doing this to the American public who trusts us with their life and security. They abused human beings without their knowledge. It's sick.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Back then, Richard Helms was head of the CIA.
Oh, yeah, I remember the name.
And he got into a lot of trouble over Iran-Contra. He ended up getting fired and was horribly punished. I mean, they fined him $1,500.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But he had ordered all the documents on MK-Ultra to be destroyed. And somebody didn't follow the order. Instead of destroying them all, somebody took 20 boxes of documents about the mind control experiments and mislabeled them intentionally as financial documents of some other project. So when Helms was out, Stansfield Turner came in under Jimmy Carter, and someone stumbled upon it then. I mean, it was sort of an accident, and it was sort of an, oh my God, what happened here? The documents were leaked. The story was headline news across the country that they were doing this. And these were not innocent projects, by the way. They were really, putting people through hell in the interests of discovering, for example, they were looking for the miracle drug that would make soldiers lay down their weapons in the battlefield. They were looking for the miracle drug that they could give to retiring CIA agents so that they could obliterate their memories of all classified material.
Wow.
And they had a list of 139, I believe it is, different drugs that they were testing. And all of this came out. And what also came out was that the New Jersey Neuropsychiatric Institute, where we had been enlisted as guinea pigs in this research, unknowingly what it was, that they were one of the institutions listed that had been involved, and the names of the doctors, and there was a professor connected with Princeton. New York Times had a headline, CIA tells Columbia University and Princeton of the secret behavioral research. Well, we think they knew it all along, but this was, sort of official notification. And they paid everyone through these bogus organizations that they set up, these corporations that had really no purpose other than to be paymaster in a way that would be, that the source of the funds would be untraceable. And that was true at the institute. So, listen, it's blowing America's mind. It's a personal story. I mean, it's a confession from both of us of things that we didn't want to talk about for decades. And we've waited till we were senior citizens now, having no
but
fear.
You had to. You had to.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, both John Selby and I have had very productive careers, and in my case, it's certainly been very successful in the entertainment business. I've produced and directed a lot of films.
Oh, yeah, I hadn't mentioned that yet, but we will.
Yeah.
We will.
People listening have probably seen a number of my films, and I worked on some of the really major franchises, like the Transformers, the original cartoons at Marvel.
Oh, now you're talking to somebody that's up her alley. She's a cartoonist.
I'm a cartoonist, and we should talk.
My name is emblazoned in big letters on the screen, TV screen, on 79 of those episodes. I was the production coordinator.
Nice.
I was there at all the recording sessions, with Optimus Prime and Megatron, and all that. We must have had 100 different voice actors. But so it was part of that at Marvel, and knew Stan Lee during those days. His days of depression, when he was sure that Spider-Man would never get made because 5 deals had fallen through. So I was present at the Spider-Man will never be made beer party in his office one day that a deal fell through. So those were my days at Marvel. And then I graduated to, if you call it that, to Lucasfilm, where Lucasfilm had me write 6 of the Star Wars sequel novels. And those came out in the 1990s.
That's pretty remarkable, Paul. It really is.
Yeah.
What a leap from this CIA secretive project to
I know. Well, the first leap, the first leap after graduating Princeton was to the American Film Institute in California. I was accepted as one of the 15 select first students that they took in there in full fellowship. But it was really a life-changing leap. Now, I'd really been interested in having a career in film from the time I was a kid. I used to make...
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
I used to make childhood 8mm monster movies. I loved the monster movies. And I was famous at age 13 as a childhood monster movie maker.
Awesome.
I was in Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine, the works. And as a kid was cavorting as a pen pal with people like Dennis Murin, who now has like 10 or 11 Academy Awards in special effects, and Rick Baker, monster maker, and special makeup effects. He's got another 10 Academy Awards. I don't have my first Academy Award yet. I have one Golden Globe nomination for Roswell, the movie Roswell, for Showtime.
Oh, I was going to mention that, Heidi. He's got Roswell, the UFO cover-up, as far as his...
Yeah, that was very tough to get it made, but I fought so hard, and we finally got a yes. But back when I was at Princeton, I didn't quite have the courage to pursue this. I was headed for medical school. I was taking the science courses and struggling my way through organic chemistry. Thought I wanted to be a psychiatrist. At that time, I thought I sort of wanted to be the next Humphrey Osmond, the psychedelic pioneer, and do research with LSD therapy and all of that. So, I got involved in the program. But the program was a two-edged sword, I always say. It wasn't all negative. I had some good experiences, but there were some nightmares, and particularly my co-writer, John Selby, his story. I think his story is even more compelling than mine. He really lays himself bare what happened to him while he was a subject at the Institute, and having his memory erased, having his past erased, so tampered with hypnotic conditions, and the manipulation. They were looking for people's behaviors under deep hypnosis when they changed their perceptions. They changed their sense of reality in some fundamental way, each different session. So they might erase your past, like I said, or erase any sense of there being a future, or stop time, or slow time down. Out-of-body experiences. John Selby was... turned into a bird in one of the sessions and told to fly away. And
really, well, there was some. There was I don't mean to interrupt necessarily, but on this one topic, there was a show. Paul, this goes back in the late '90s. That John T. White. He had that in Sightings, I think it was the
Sightings?
Series.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And they had an. Well, see, now this sounds, we're just about ready for the break, but I can't tell all the dynamics of it, but I have had contact with people that were, yes, truly telepathic, and there was a governmental aspect to it. And what happened was I had to travel on business, but I wanted to see the show, but I just had to travel going out of town. So I tried to get a copy of the Sightings. At that time, there was Burrell transcripts you could buy instead of the DVD or whatever. And all 8 years were on there for Sightings, except that one show they were touting that week. Somebody put the hiatus to the information, because since I'd personally experienced telepathy and whatnot, knew there was a governmental component, I wanted to see what they had to say. What the subject matter was, the telepathic capabilities of U.S. intelligence. And Paul,
of course, they explored remote viewing too. I think that came under the MK.
Oh yes,
program. With some success.
Yes, the remote viewing, yes. Oh, with great success, Paul.
Stanford University.
Hal Puthoff, I think, was one of the guys.
Yes,
and
he was part of it.
there was a guy named, Heidi, who's that buddy of mine in Austin? Golly, he was head of the International Remote Viewing Association. His name escapes me.
I'm terrible with names. I'm not
Paul,
sure.
Paul Smith. Paul Smith. Yeah, Paul Smith.
Okay.
But he was involved with the Operation Stargate in Maryland, Fort Meade. But I mean, this was weird. To actually experience it was quite bizarre. But,
well, when you experienced telepathy, let me ask you, in what sense did you have telepathic? Was it communication with another person? What happened?
Yes, several people, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I could communicate. You had an unusual feeling in the foremost part of your head. It was kind of like a pressure. And, it was like, Kevin, come get the hamburgers or something like that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it was a back and forth, just like a whisper kind of a thing. And you heard it very audibly. And it was, I wasn't a great receiver, but I was okay. But evident 0.5% of the people in the world have that capability. And at any rate, I don't want to say too much on it, but we're just about coming to our top of the hour break, but we've got a lot to talk about. I'll get right back into it when we get back.
Okay, Blowing America's Mind is the book. It's at Amazon. It's both a printed book or a Kindle, or you can get it for any ebook reader. So it's out there now. It's just been out a short while, and it took decades to come to bring this information.
Well, we'll be right back and talk about it in just a sec. We'll be right back. Well, let's keep getting back on with Paul, and we stopped at a particular point there, but you've done so many things, and this Roswell, the UFO cover-up, that was a heck of a topic, and
we got some major stars to be in that movie. I mean, we had Kyle MacLachlan of Twin Peaks, and we had Dwight Yoakam and Martin Sheen. Xander Berkeley and Charles Martin Smith, who's he goes back to being an actor in American Graffiti. So it was just really good fortune to get Roswell made. I really believed in the testimony that I was hearing from the old military people who had been there, and then I got to hear personally from two of our astronauts who were absolutely convinced that it was an extraterrestrial recovery. So making the movie was a great adventure. But, most of the movies I've done, excuse me, I get rid of the frog in my throat. Most of the movies I've done have been on, controversial subjects, things that push the envelope. People get their ideas knocked around from what I do. I mean, Jesus in India was one of them. The theory that Jesus.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. Yeah, it was. But on this on the Roswell thing, I actually met this guy. He was like a retired Air Force. He only made E6, but a sergeant, their version of a sergeant. And when he was a young Air Force guy, he met a guy in turn that was an officer at Roswell, and that guy told him, buddy, take it to the bank. That thing was as alien got. Don't believe any of the BS they told you.
Absolutely.
The Roswell thing was as for real as the hand on the end of your arm.
Absolutely so. I had a meeting at I think it's called the National Museum of Nuclear Energy, where I was introduced to one of the very old soldiers now who had been at Roswell, and he described having seen the aliens, and not something he had ever talked about, hardly at all, and he'd been trained in secrecy, but he admitted it, he gave a description, and listening to someone under those circumstances, someone who's old and toward the end of their life, you just know you're here when you're hearing the truth. You can feel it. So no, that was a great adventure. The fact that Showtime said yes, and then that movie's been on TV so many times.
Right.
And then CBS got the rights at one point, and since CBS got the rights, it's really hard to find. So
really? They bought it up they buy it up to hold it or something, or?
I don't know what their policy is now, but they go back to the old days of Walter Cronkite when they used to put the debunking UFO shows on the air.
Yeah.
That was a lot of that was CBS. Yeah, and they were part of the company.
So they were basically government tools, basically. Yeah.
Exactly. So our film eventually got swallowed up that was after it was on the air around 100 times. But they haven't released the DVD in years, and you can't. Hard to find on the internet. Maybe if you look for Roswell, the UFO cover-up, you might find a pirated version somewhere. But anyway,
Hard to find.
Well, they had a little thing just as tangentially to Roswell is that about that same time they had this General Ramey, who was the major domo at the time, but he
was in Fort Worth.
They had a thing. Yes,
the head of the 8th Air Force. Yeah.
Yes, in Fort Worth, what happened was they had their little takeoff on the X-Files was called the Text Files.
Okay.
But they had an interesting connection to it, Paul. What happened was they said, "Oh, you think that was all baloney?" They showed with enhanced techniques that Ramey was holding up what was allegedly the weather balloon or something that's supposed to be the subject of all. And
he had a telegram. He had a telegram in his hand. That they never expected that advanced technology would be able to read in the photo, So he got contradicted by
there was
technology.
It's on the doggone weather balloon, and the army I was in never had any hieroglyphics on anything. And I doubt they did back then. But it showed that there was a con, is basically what I'm saying. I didn't know about the telegram. I didn't.
Oh, yeah. Well, Ramey, I said he was the head of the 8th Air Force. Actually, it was the 8th Army Air Force, because in those days, in 1947, you didn't have a separate Air Force yet. You got that, I think, in the fall of 1947, but not that summer when Roswell happened. Well, anyway, listen, that was a cover-up, and MK Ultra, that my new book is about, was a cover-up, and Jesus in India, cover-up. I've done all those different subjects.
Tell me about the Jesus in India.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear about that.
I'll mention to you, it came out in 2007 or 2008. First it was on the Sundance Channel, and then NBC Universal distributed it to TV around the world. The premise is that there's 13 years in the life of Christ that are not discussed in the Bible, from age 13 to age 30. The missing years of Christ, they call it. There's one sentence about it in the Bible, and that's pretty vague. So in India, they have believed for hundreds of years that at about age 13 that Jesus took the Silk Road to the east. And lived among Hindus and Buddhists, and that when he began his ministry in Judea, that was after he had been, to the east, and he was returning with a lot of influence from Eastern religion. Because he no longer preached an eye for an eye like the Old Testament, and he was Jewish background culturally. He came in with, love your enemies, right? Well, that was much more Hindu or Buddhist. And so I embarked on a film to see, is there any evidence at all for these ideas about Jesus having been in India? And I worked with a writer named Edward T. Martin. He wrote a book called King of Travelers, Jesus' Lost Years in India. And I ended up republishing that book when it went out of print. And I went to India with Ed, and we had a Hindu crew, and we traveled across 4,000 miles of India, going to ancient temples, Buddhist monasteries, up into the Himalayas. We went to Kashmir, which was dangerous, very dangerous. We took our life in our hands when we were in Kashmir.
What's with Kashmir? What are they, bandits there or something? Or?
Well, no. See, Kashmir is it's heaven on earth in terms of its beauty, but it's disputed between the Hindus and the Muslims. India and Pakistan, right? So there's Indian soldiers on every street corner, And there's terrorism there, and Americans are in danger there. The State Department said not a good idea, but they didn't forbid going there. So, there were, I think, around 12 people killed violently about 2 days after we got out of there. So, yeah, terrorism sort of followed behind us by a few days.
Goodness,
as did floods, and, all kinds of unwelcome things. It was always behind us by a couple of days. We're kind of blessed when we made the movie. But the thing, it's current now, is that I heard from a theater in Italy, in Florence, Italy, the Odeon Theater in Florence, Firenze. And they said that they wanted to have a special showing of Jesus in India, and it would be like for VIPs. And so they worked that out with me. That's going to happen this May.
Cool.
May 23rd, Jesus in India at the Odeon Theater in Florence with Italian subtitles. And I did film a little of the movie at the Vatican. We got their point of view in there, too. So it's going to be really interesting. I've decided to head to Italy, and spend some time over there.
Well, that sounds like an excellent life you've got going on. It certainly aren't dealing with trivialities like I have to do.
Just a bit. I've always been
a lot of things have fallen into place since my days as an MK Ultra subject. I want to say, but a lot of this came about as my rebellion against the manipulation and mind control and the hypnosis that I went through, where you give yourself over to the experiments, thinking it's for psychological research, and
it wasn't.
You're being very manipulated, and then you go into states of depression, and it takes you down, and it robs you of part of yourself.
Well,
so I want to say I got to a point, as did my co-author, where at different times we quit, we left abruptly, we just got out, and it was that strength to break free and the rebellion of that. That from that also came the strength by which I said, hey, everybody thinks I should be a doctor. I don't really want to be a doctor. I know what I want to do. They all tell me it's crazy to try to go to Hollywood and be a filmmaker, but it's my life, and that's what I'm going to do. You see, so that strength had to come from somewhere, because everyone I knew was against that idea.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah. I can imagine.
Well, everybody wants their kid to be a doctor, or there's somebody they know.
I was going to say, in regards to this project, and I just don't find that the government ever quits anything fully, whether they're busted or not. So I'm assuming that they took a step forward and they got their hands on what it was they were looking for, because I'm sure you must be familiar with military abductions or my labs. I've had them. They've got their hands on something, because to be able to do what they did, and I saw dozens of people where I was at, and the way that they were able to control the people and tell me, oh, you're not going to remember any of this. I'm like, oh, no, I'm going to remember you, and what you're doing right over here. They were not happy with me. And it's they've got their hands on something. I don't know.
Well, we laugh at the movie Men in Black, which was a comedy. But they had those little hand wands.
Yeah.
They would go poof with, and then the memory goes blank of the, that was a serious military objective. And by working with subjects in deep hypnosis, they were trying to see how far they could go.
By all means necessary.
Yeah. So blowing America's mind, I tell you, the John Selby's side of the story is absolutely riveting. Because, see, I was a year behind him. I got into the program a year after he was into it. His mind had already been blown. He was manipulated, controlled. They were turning him into a training hypnotist and offering him a full-time job the next year to keep him there under their wing. And they were going to get him a draft deferment for it, because it was in the national interest, they said, and he wouldn't have to go to Vietnam. So they got their hooks into him really deep. And he fell in love at that time, and the Institute considered the woman that he was involved with as a threat to their research.
Oh, boy.
Oh, really?
So they used the hypnosis to try to get him to break with his girlfriend. And you see, it's so well written what John Selby has done, of the mental agony of what he went through, of not understanding the extent to which they were using hypnotic conditions to, for example, bring on a bout of nausea when he's with her. It's programmed into him through hypnosis.
That's horrible.
And then eventually, when it didn't work to get him to break up with her, they offered her a job at the Institute to pull her into the family, so to speak, and keep her under their control. This thing builds to there's a confrontation that's real. It's all real. Everything here, we're writing what happened to us. We just waited decades to come out with it and admit it. But John Selby's confrontation with the president of Princeton at that time, Robert F. Goheen, was very conservative, son of, I think, Presbyterian ministers, or came from a long line, that kind of family. Yeah. And there was a confrontation of the worlds as John Selby tried to talk to him about LSD and what was happening on campus and the Institute, and he decided that the president of Princeton was, heavily CIA connected himself. And one of the things that raises your eyebrows on that is that Robert F. Goheen was appointed to be the ambassador to India by Richard Nixon after he was president of Princeton. So that's a nuclear-armed country. He's our American ambassador. I mean, he must have had some really deep government connections. And
sure.
John Selby saw evidence of this, and we both felt that we had walked into this enormous spider web. And Princeton was part of it, but the Princeton experience, as it comes across in Blowing America's Mind, is really something to behold. It was the end of the era of Princeton as all-male school. There were no women there when we were there. Okay, Michelle Obama eventually graduated from Princeton. So did what is Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor's first name?
Golly, I don't know.
And Elena Kagan. So two Supreme Court justices. There were a lot of women who went on to be very prominent, who eventually graduated from Princeton. But when we were there, no women. So you're getting to see Princeton in its twilight era as this all-male party school.
Wow.
That has this insidiousness underneath through these experiments that were going on by the CIA. Those were my strongest memories.
Boy, what a deal that really is. Well, I wonder, really, like I say, as far as I mentioned earlier about the sightings deal, where the government or somebody must have covered up the records for that show. I guess the question would be, Paul, why did they let them do that show anyway? Why didn't they get clued onto it and say, well, we better put the kibosh on producing it? They actually did, air the show. They just killed the podcast.
Kevin, that's a really good question, and it has a really interesting answer, I think. You see, there were a couple of other shows produced back then with a similar kind of effect. And let's say one of them was sponsored by AT&T. Well, there was one that was actually made by the Disney company called Alien Encounters. They were opening an alien encounter ride, I think, in Disney World or some attraction.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Oh.
And they put together a 1-hour show about UFOs, taking the position that this has all been covered up forever and it's about to be released. And we're telling you what's going to be released. Now, this 1-hour show was used as kind of a test to see what the public reaction would be, and it was not shown across the whole country. It was shown in selected cities at like 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning. All right.
So I would have caught it.
It was a deliberate test, and then there was this other show that Bill Moore was part of that had the aviary, the MJ-12. Information was touted in this. I can't remember the name of that one, but it was another show that was clearly a test. It's like, okay, let me ask you a question here. This recent announcement in Hawaii and then a few days later in Japan that Hawaii and Japan were under attack from a North Korean missile.
Yeah.
And they said, it's an accident. Oh, we're sorry. Somebody just did something wrong. This guy, he did it. He's sorry. He said he's sorry. He's not losing his job, but we're transferring him to a different department laterally.
Button.
Right. So you believe that wasn't a test? Of course it was a test. It had to be a test. They wanted to see how prepared the public was. So they're doing these things all the time. And MK Ultra, that Blowing America's Mind is filled with, had tests such as they would send people into subway cars wearing masks so they wouldn't breathe it, and they'd spray LSD on innocent people in there. And want to see what would happen. It's one of the MK Ultra experiments. It's documented in the files that came out in 1977. So, of course, the CIA said, we're sorry, when all this came out. And they had a Senate hearing, and Ted Kennedy's involved, and the church committee, and in
the
like
church.
2 days,
I'm sure it was
2 days, 2 days, they say, this is what happened. It happened. It never would have happened under our watch, under Jimmy Carter and Stansfield Turner. We renounce it. Nothing like this is ever going to happen again, we assure you. We're going to go looking for the people that were the victims of these experiments. We're going to recompense them and make good by them, and this will never happen again. Well, let me tell you, cold day in hell before they went after some of their victims to try to make good with them.
Sure.
And up in Canada, there was Dr. Cameron at McGill. The experiment that he ran for MK Ultra. Yeah, it was horrific, absolutely horrific what he was doing. They were like experiments like dreamed up by the Nazis. And he was taking people that were basically normal and had come for help with depression and anxiety, and was turning them into basket cases with these mind control techniques. This is all documented, and these people sued him. They sued the CIA. They sued Cameron. We've got headlines about this in our book. I mean, I collected all the key newspaper articles about this when it was exposed. And our book is mainly our personal story, and then in the epilogue we get into all the things that we learned as time went on about MK Ultra and our part in it. But we've got articles in here that, prove that this is real, this is what happened. Here's one article. Stansfield Turner calls the practice abhorrent. CIA ran 149 mind control projects. That's the Los Angeles Times. Here's another one from the LA Times. Wanted to silence ex-agents. CIA once sought an amnesia drug. So there's plenty here to prove that this, happened. And
worse is going on. It just is. They would not end such a thing that was proving to be so successful. I mean, it's sick.
Probably took different forms.
I've experienced a lot of odd things myself, and one of the most angering things were the military abductions, because these are our own people we're supposed to trust and rely upon, and they're looking you in the face and they're lying, and they're taking you against your will.
They're using you as a subject.
Yes, and and speaking about testing the population, with this release of the Pentagon's information saying, we spent over the past 5 years looking at
$22 million study.
That was such a load of crap. It's like, you guys have been pouring money into this. You release this little bitty cookie. And it's like, I turned around and I'm asking people on the streets, I'm like, so how do you feel about the government admitting that we're not alone? Because they said it. Louis Elizondo said it on CNN. What's your conclusion? Well, we're not alone. I'm like, no one, people are just like, cool. Like, they've been conditioned to get to this point, I think, to be able to understand
running around the
and
streets
open up to the idea that this is a real phenomenon, that it barely made a ripple, and people were barely even aware that this was announced. I'm going like, I knew it. I knew it,
Yeah, I always felt that they would announce the existence of aliens on the same day as a Super Bowl game. And
like misdirection deal,
Hate to miss the game.
Kevin, did you deliberately schedule this interview to coincide with the President's State of the Union address?
I'm boycotting
people I have to answer.
Are you one of those insiders? Huh? Was there something I can read into that?
Yes, I have. But no, I have people I answer to, but that's not. But they're all female.
Okay. But Paul, what did you think about that release, though, Paul, about the Pentagon? I mean, that's just such crumbs. Such crumbs.
Well, $22 million study when it's been like $22 billion.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have ways of losing trillions of dollars under a cabbage leaf.
Interesting, like you said, Paul, that like supposedly Operation Stargate closed, and that the government racked up all its telepathic studies and mind control studies, and that it's all over and done. That's all.
Well, listen, Kevin, I think as we're getting to the bottom of the hour, I'd like a chance to emphasize to people about where they can find Blowing America's Mind. So
absolutely.
The book was just published, and we placed it at Amazon.com as a print book. There's the trade paperback version, or you can get the ebook version. I think the trade paperback, I think they're having like an $18 price on that now, and it's like, I don't know, $9 for the $8 for the Kindle.
I love cover. I love the cover.
Let me explain the cover. The cover, two guys without shirts on a bench. That's me and my co-author from our Princeton days.
I love it.
Sunning ourselves with Princeton University behind us, and behind the bench that we're sitting on with our long hair and our sort of hippie attitude there is sort of a man in black wearing dark sunglasses.
It's hilarious.
Over our shoulder. And boy, did we learn that you call them spooks or men in black, whatever you want to call them, they were over our shoulder then. They were over my shoulder when I was making Roswell, right?
Yeah.
And I was tipped off that they took great amusement in what I was doing with the film Roswell.
Really? Awesome.
Yeah.
You think they're human?
I was told there were a lot of insiders that favored the release of the information, and that I had my cheering squad inside. But obviously, those that keep it secret have won out still. Because they're not admitting anything about Roswell, and they're admitting very, very little about the alien craft.
I know.
It'll be our great-great-grandchildren. Maybe some more will leak by then.
Do you think that the Men in Black are human or not?
You know where that story comes from about the Men in the Black? It goes back to a book, I think, by a man named Barker. One of the early 1950s UFO books, or late 1940s, called The Flying Saucers and the Three Men. And supposedly this guy Barker, who ran a flying saucer club nationally, learned the answer to the flying saucer mystery and was getting ready to expose it, and then he was visited by three men in black. And after that visit, he resigned as president, refunded all the members their money, said he was never going to talk about it again.
Wow. Yeah, Gray Barker. Yeah. Wow.
So whether those three men that visited him were from here or from Langley, Virginia, or somewhere else, who knows?
Yeah.
But they can have a way of impressing you on that there's certain lines you must not cross. All right.
For sure.
So
crazy.
So there it is.
Well, Paul, I sure appreciate it. You've got excellent information, a very excellent career. It's great talking to you. Hopefully we'll have you back on again sometime.
Yeah, I could talk to you forever. Lots to cover.
I know it.
Thank you. I really enjoy that, and I hope people's curiosity is now piqued about Blowing America's Mind.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Well, they better be. They better be. Well, you have a good evening, and we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night. Well, Heidi, that was some pretty good stuff there. It really was.
Wow. My mind is blown.
I mean, you wouldn't think, I guess I'm hopelessly naive, but you wouldn't think about poor old Princeton being involved in that. But I guess they're as slimy as anybody else out there.
Goodness,
but
that's crazy.
we're going to have Alan Patch. We're going to have Alan Patch on next week, and we're going to go into more detail about UFOs too. But I guess we better say goodnight and sail off into the sunset.
Yes, good night, everybody.